Hold the front page. I'm Lembit Öpik and welcome to Press Release here on Press TV, where we find the facts, kill the spin and tell it like it is about the headlines. We'll be looking at tales from all around the world and sorting out the reality from the rubbish. First, a roundup of the week's news with the stories that cause more questions than answers. We discover how America's attempt to squeeze Tehran dry of gasoline has created an Iranian oil bonanza. We try to figure out why millions haven't got enough food in the world's 6th richest nation. And we find out how the US thinks the best thing for the Middle East is, yes, you've guessed it, America. What weirdness, what a week, what a world. Let's get down to the details and separate the political friction from the political fiction. Tehran has been putting up with quite a lot of aggravation recently. Donald Trump, who still thinks he's in charge of America, has worked hard to try and stop the Iranians from selling anything to the rest of the world. He's even tried to prevent Iranian oil from leaving the country. And the result? Well, as usual, the law of unintended consequences wins again. Iran has managed to actually increase its gasoline production to over 100 million litres per day. This means the country can supply its own fuel needs. Production at the Persian Gulf Star refinery in Bandar Abbas has gone up massively, proving once again that there is always the potential of progress in adversity. This news has been proudly announced by the Iranian government.
Thank God we have a suitable and good condition regarding the export of oil. The purpose of the Americans was to stop our oil exports. Here, I want to announce explicitly to our people that our oil export has become far better.
Strangely, the Americans haven't sent a letter of congratulations. Maybe that's because this is exactly the opposite of what Washington had in mind. It's quite a turnaround. Iran used to import gasoline to fill the gap between domestic supply and consumption. Now it has enough to export it. Perhaps Tehran should be sending a letter of thank you to America. Without their sanctions, this might never have happened. When British people fly on aeroplanes, they're often asked to donate money to international children's charity UNICEF to help children who are living in hunger and poverty. Well, it turns out that, on that basis, UNICEF might be talking about children in Britain. According to a report in British Parliament, 1 in 5 children in Britain under 15 are now living in a home with what's called food insecurity. Yes, the world's 6th most wealthy nation has over 2 million people who live in circumstances defined as having limited access to food due to lack of money or other resources. It's so bad, British politicians now want a dedicated Minister for Hunger. In 21st century Britain, one food bank network alone, the Trussell Trust, handed out 1.3 million food parcels in 2018. How can this have happened? At the end of 2018, millions of children were trapped in poverty in rich nations like Britain and the US. But why hasn't the public gone crazy about this, even though there have been regular headlines showing just how many children live in families that can barely get by? According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation's latest poverty report, 500,000 more children are living in poverty in Britain than 5 years ago. They say much of the rise in child poverty has been driven by more employed people becoming so poor that they can't afford the basics. Remember former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, nice guy who lost an election? Well, he pointed out child poverty was going down up to 2010 when he was in charge. Now it's going up, up and away. When families can't pay their bills because of a tiny wage growth, big benefits cuts, and the rising cost of living, it's the children who suffer. The homelessness charity Shelter estimates that 130,000 children in Britain were in temporary accommodation in December 2018. That's 5 kids in every school living in unfit or substandard circumstances with a risk of being thrown out of their home at any time. Meanwhile, the charity Action for Children says the double blow of austerity and universal credit is making it even worse. But don't worry, the government knows there's a problem. They have a plan to make it better, I think, even though they haven't told us what that plan is. Maybe that's because it's a secret. Or maybe, just maybe, they haven't got a plan at all. Food for thought, if not food for Britain's children. Good old US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has been travelling all over the Middle East to spread America's message of international ambitions. Was he talking about human rights or democracy? Of course not. It was largely about evil Iran, which, according to Mr. Pompeo, is the international bad guy. Mentioning Iran 30 times in one of his speeches, Mr. Pompeo called the country a common enemy of regional countries and of America itself. Now this bit gets confusing. Speaking at the American University in the Egyptian capital, Magic Mike slammed Obama for getting it all wrong in the Middle East.
In just 24 months, actually less than 2 years, the United States under President Trump has reasserted its traditional role as a force for good in this region. We've learned from our mistakes.
By contrast, and perhaps to the surprise of many observers, Pompeo claimed the Trump administration is strengthening America's alliances and rallying Middle East nations to work together for our shared security and prosperity. That's a bit different to what a former US Republican Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, said. She admitted that American policy had pursued stability at the expense of democracy and achieved neither. There's none of that defeatist talk for punchy Pompeo. He said the age of self-inflicted American shame is over, and so are the policies that produce so much needless suffering. Now comes the real new beginning. So what is the plan? Trump says they're leaving Syria. Pompeo suggests they're staying. Trump says he's going to intervene less than Obama, but all the signs hint he's hitting out even more. So what's the plan, man? Is Trump the disengager or Obama 2.0? Let's note what Daring Don had to say about it all himself. His comment is pretty clear.
So Syria was lost long ago. It was lost long ago. And besides that, I don't know, we're talking about sand and death.
Trump stated shortly before Pompeo jetted off to the Middle East and claimed to have destroyed most of ISIL, and is happy to leave the rest of the job to Russia and, wait for it, Iran. But isn't Iran part of the problem? Hasn't his administration said that they can't trust Tehran to be good? It's all very strange. Mr. Pompeo also warned against a US retreat in the Middle East, saying, when America retreats, chaos follows. I think he might just have that the wrong way round. And as usual, I'll make some predictions about what could happen in the near future. Firstly, Iran will continue to find new ways of getting even stronger thanks to US sanctions, which make no sense at all. Next, British children will keep getting poorer thanks to UK government's austerity policies and a secret plan to fix things that might not exist at all. And thirdly, the US will keep telling everyone they are the great hope in the Middle East, even though quite a few actual residents in the region may prefer to describe America's policies as hopeless rather than hopeful. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and join me next time for Press Release here on Press TV, the show that takes the political fiction out of the political friction. Hold the front page, but don't trust it. Trust me.